Hello. It has been a while since I've made a Latropeth video. The basic course in Latropeth is now completed, and what I now want to do is make some videos on the native Latropethian writing system. Before I do that, I want to make one or maybe two videos that put Latropeth in context. Some of the concepts in these videos are going to seem, well, what has this got to do with the Latropethian language or the writing system? If you familiarize yourselves, trust me, the Latropethian writing system and the grammar will make more sense. So, broad topics here: the Latrorealm, the transportal gate, geological timescale and animal evolution, animals and birds in the Latrorealm and their mythological classification. Earth and the Latrorealm. The Latrorealm is a parallel Earth-like planet. A wormhole gate opens between the two worlds at periodic intervals. Each time the gate opens, something's transported from Earth to the Latrorealm. The gate's also called the Portal. Latropeth is a palindrome, almost, of the portal. So the term Latropeth, or the working title of the language, which I've used for quite a long time now, Latropeth, is a palindrome of the portal, spelt backwards. It's not a perfect palindrome because the T and the H is mixed up. This is what it's referring to. It was only ever a working title, and this is what it's actually referring to. The portal between the Earth and the Latrorealm, opening periodically. Think of Venetian blinds, where the shutters are opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, opening, closing. Each time the blinds open, something is transported from the Earth to the Latrorealm. That could be animals, could be people, could be components of the atmosphere. So these are the different time periods that this gate is supposed to have opened. So 200 million years ago, called P-Gate 1, 100 million years ago, P-Gate 2, and so on and so forth, through to P-Gate 5, 50,000 years ago. Animals of the Latrorealm. So if you've had a look, especially at the myth videos, where it describes the origins of various animals, you will have noticed that there's quite a lot of them that are familiar to Earthlings, such as the ones that are shown in here. You will also have noticed that there are animals that are very unfamiliar to Earthlings that are described in the myth videos, such as teod tree herbivore, large forest herbivore, multi-tuberculate. What's that about? Egg snatcher, snappermouth. I mean, what's that about? Animals of the Latrorealm, as it turns out, they all have Earth origins. Animals not currently existing on Earth were either transported to the Latrorealm from Earth prehistorically or evolved in the Latrorealm from animals transported from Earth to the Latrorealm prehistorically. The geological time scale. So, as a lot of you probably already know, it has to do with the rock record. Rocks can be dated with a fair degree of accuracy because of carbon dating, but it's also important for the dating of fossils. So animals die and they get fossilized in the rock, and if you can date the rock from what period it comes from, then you can date the fossil. The question is, why on earth am I talking about animal evolution in a video about Latropeth? Because, to give you a clear picture of the animals that exist in the Latrorealm, I have to talk about animals that once existed on Earth that no longer exist. There is a connection and it will come together. The formal classification of different time periods for the geological timescale. Don't pay attention so much to the column on the right. It's more just dating particular mass extinctions, more so the column in the middle. So for example, the Cambrian, roughly 500 million years ago, is supposed to be when multicellular organisms first emerged. For the vast majority of the history of life on Earth, life exists as single-celled bacteria, archaea, etc. At some point in time, in some place, they start to behave communally, such that they become so tightly integrated as communities that they present as the first multicellular organisms. Their simplest form, for example, sponges, jellyfish. The Devonian is said to be the age of fish. The Carboniferous is said to be the age of amphibians. Obviously, there's a lot more to these time periods than just this. Everybody's heard of the Jurassic because of Jurassic Park. So the age of the dinosaurs that spans the Triassic, the Jurassic, through to the end of the Cretaceous, 65 million years ago, where we get the mass extinction and wipeout of the dinosaurs. But not all of them. Stay tuned. Some milestones in evolution. Think of evolution as selective breeding, where nature is the selector, nature in its broadest sense, such as the environment, access to food, who the predators are, and the traits that are being selected for are natural variations in a species, where a particular variation will happen to be advantageous in terms of surviving, thriving, reproducing. More individuals with that trait will be in a position to reproduce. That trait will become concentrated in the gene pool, amplify that over time, and you can get speciation. So, some important milestones in tetrapod evolution, the evolution of animals with 4 legs, and incidentally, ultimately the animals with 2 legs as well, like our good selves. The transition from fish to amphibians, so it's said to be from a lobe-finned, which is a primitive type of fish, they still exist, with a lobe-finned fish with fleshy fins, moves on to the land, and those fleshy fins evolve into rudimentary limbs. The amniotic egg, so the evolution of amniotes. If you have an egg with a protective shell and protective membranes and nutrient supply for the fetus, you're not as tied to the water. You can move more inland because your spawn don't have to spend the first part of their lives in the water. Let's now have a look at a bit of a branching pattern, a speciation branching pattern. And I want you to pay attention to the synapsids and the sauropsid division. The sauropsids will lead ultimately to reptiles and dinosaurs and birds, etc. The synapsids will ultimately lead to the mammalian lineage. And this is a more detailed diagram. I want you to focus on the synapsids here. There's some evolutional refinements to give the therapsids. During the Permian, which you can see shown here, circa 290 to 250 million years ago, these are the predominant land animals. These are the precursors to mammals. They're certainly not mammals yet. As they get a bit closer to mammals, we call them mammalia forms. These are not the dinosaurs. These are the synapsids and the therapsids, predominate during the Permian. It's funny how they have not captured the public imagination the same way that the dinosaurs have. So it turns out at the end of the Permian there's a mass extinction which wipes out most life on Earth, and it completely throws things off course, and it sets the scene for what will be the reptiles becoming the predominant animals later on. So why am I talking about all this? I want to zoom in now on some particular species or genera that will be very relevant to the Latrorealm. In this diagram, you can see branching patterns and some outcomes that include modern mammals. So you can see the placentals and the marsupials. You can also see monotremes, like a platypus. But I want you to focus on some outcomes where there's representatives that no longer exist on Earth, namely the Morganucidon and the multituberculates. Here's another diagram with some more outcomes and evolutional branching patterns. I want you to focus on the Hadrocodium. Here's another diagram. We're getting much closer here to modern mammals. So I want to focus here on the Eomya scansauria. Okay, let's say something about the Morganucidons. It lived approximately 200 million years ago on Earth. This is late Triassic. Probably ate insects and small invertebrates. Egg-laying, possessed skin covered with hair, with a double jaw joint articulation. So let's have a look at some differences between the mammal and the reptile jaw joint. So a paleontologist can use this to distinguish a mammal from a reptile skull. The reptile jaw joint is more primitive and it's further back, an articulation of the quadrate and the articular. The reptilian middle ear contains one auditory ossicle bone. So the sound comes in from the outside, hits the eardrum, vibrates the ossicle conveys the vibration through to the inner ear, where via nerve pulses conducted through to the animal brain and registered as sound. The mammal jaw joint is a more later evolutionary development, and it's further forward. An articulation of the squamosal portion of the temporal bone and the dentary. In a human, that's the mandibular. So we've got a temporomandibular joint. The ancestral jaw joint has not disappeared. It's moved up into the mammalian middle ear and provided 2 additional auditory ossicles. So in a mammal, you have a stapes, an incus, and a malleus. This is a recurring theme in evolution, by the way, where something is used for one function and then it gets refashioned by evolution and it ends up being used for a different function in one of the evolutionary descendants. One of the things that I read was that the advantage of having the 3 auditory ossicles in the mammal was later on when the reptiles took over, the mammals were relegated to more narrow niches. For example, being nocturnal, eating insects, and the high-pitched sound of the insect was better picked up by having a refined auditory apparatus and helped the mammal locate its prey. The Morganucidon has a double jaw joint. It has the quadrate articular plus the squamosal dentary, and it represents a transitionary form. It has the more primitive version of the jaw joint plus the form that will be conveyed through to its related mammalian lineages. The crux of all that is the Morganucidon gets transported to the Latrorealm 200 million years ago through P-gate 1. The Morganucidon goes from Earth to the Latrorealm where it lives on. The multituberculate, so we're back to Earth now, first appeared in the Middle Jurassic, fossil record spanning over 130 million years, omnivorous, diverse and widespread, more than 200 species known, displayed several rows of small cusps, or tubercles, hence its name, that's in the teeth, and a massive fourth lower premolar, the plagiolacoid. You've got this projecting tooth that you can see in the illustration there. Amazing. These things were everywhere. Like multituberculates were, nobody would have heard of them now, but they were so widespread. One of the theories as to why they became extinct ultimately was that the ancestors of modern rodents, when they emerged, they filled the same niches that multituberculates filled. So they had sort of rodent-like behavior. Therefore, it placed them in competition, and the ancestors of modern rodents basically won out. And that led to the multituberculates becoming extinct. However, that's debated. Anyway, for our purposes, the multituberculate gets transported to the Latrorealm, so 100 million years ago through P-gate 2. The Hadrocodium, this is a mammalia form of the early Jurassic, so it's approximately 195 million years ago. Mouse-like, paperclip-sized animals are very, very small, but with apparently a large brain, large cranial cavity. Hadrocodium gets transported to the Latrorealm 100 million years ago, also through P-gate 2. The Aemia, a genus of fossil mammals containing the single species Aemia scansora. Several features in common with placental mammals, meaning modern mammals that have a placenta that are not marsupials. Aemia, like other mammals and living marsupials, had a narrow pelvic outlet suggesting small undeveloped neonates requiring extensive nurturing. So they could represent a development towards your modern placental mammal. The Aemia gets transported to the Latrorealm again 100 million years ago through P-gate 2. So now we're going to move to the Latrorealm and we're going to have a look at what happens with these animals once they get to the Latrorealm. And what happens, at least in a few cases, is that they continue to evolve locally in the Latrorealm into evolutional descendants specific to the Latrorealm. The Morganucodon evolves into 3 different forms: the arboreal herbivore, the large forest herbivore, and the nocturnal insectivore. So the nocturnal insectivore basically has a long, elongated tongue, large eyes for its vision at night. Arboreal herbivore is superficially resembling something like a monkey because of its habitat. The large forest herbivore is probably the more prominent and perhaps the more interesting of the local Latropethian evolutional descendants of the Morganucodon. It's basically the coniferous trees that you get in the Latrorealm grow very tall. So there's like a sort of a high source of vegetation. So this evolutional descendant has taken advantage of that by evolving a very, very long neck to reach that vegetation in the Latropethian forests. So in some ways you may think of a giraffe. It's a little bit different to a giraffe because it's got an extensible neck. It can actually bring its neck right down to its body and it can extend it right up. So perhaps more novel is the local Latropethian evolutional descendants of the Hadrocodium, the snapper mouth, which has evolved a metal blade apparatus in its mouth to cut through leaves and things. The egg snatcher, as the name suggests, it snatches eggs. This is from birds. And it has some features there. So it's got, at the end of its limbs, it's got these coiled appendages for snatching the egg without breaking it. It actually has a pouch that you can't really see where it can store the egg. The ears there you can see are these big flaps. So it turns out that there's been an evolutional or a co-evolutional response from birds in the Latrorealm where they lay eggs that can actually release poisonous fumes, concentrated hydrogen sulfide most likely. So in response to that, as a co-evolutional response to that, the egg snatcher has these big flaps that it can put over its mouth and its eyes and its nose as the fumes pass by. Poisonous fume-releasing eggs have got relevance to the people living in the Latrorealm, and eggs have quite a different significance in the Latrorealm than they do on Earth. For example, in warfare, so an egg fight in the Latrorealm is a far more serious thing than an egg fight on Earth. Now we're going to switch to bird evolution, and we're going to have a look at birds. Maybe pause and get a cup of coffee if you like, because this is a fairly long video. So going back to this diagram from earlier, I want you to focus this time on the sauropsids. The sauropsids are the lineage that will lead to reptiles, dinosaurs, and birds. So birds evolved directly from dinosaurs, from theropod dinosaurs during the Jurassic, such as velociraptors. Some experts will refer to birds as extant dinosaurs. So this is what I was referring to before when I said the end Cretaceous extinction event wiped out the dinosaurs, but not all of them. So next time that you're at a cafe with outdoor seating and a bird lands close by, it's not just a bird, it's a dinosaur. So there's a famous transitional fossil called Archaeopteryx, which is supposed to display basically both reptilian and bird features. Much to my surprise, about 2 years ago, I was in Emporium in Melbourne and I discovered that there's a shop named after this fossil. Archaeopteryx, I think it's a clothing store, and they've abbreviated it to Arcteryx, and they've got a picture of the fossil in their store branding. So that's random. So here's yet another diagram for you. So just wanted you to focus here on the enantiornites, which are also called the opposite birds, and the Neognathi, which is the lineage that leads to modern birds. Opposite birds were once the predominant birds prehistorically on Earth. The opposite refers to the shoulder blade, so it's concave in the opposite birds, whereas in the quote-unquote normal birds, if you like, the shoulder blade is convex. The reason I mention the opposite birds is because one of them will be relevant to the Latrorealm. So the Shanwei was a genus of long-snouted enantiornithian birds. So it was an opposite bird from the early Cretaceous, fossil in China. It was toothed bird. So the early prehistoric birds actually had teeth. They lose their teeth later on. So the rest of these are not opposite birds. They're quote-unquote normal birds. The Hesperornis regalis, this is a large bird measuring about 1.5 to 2 meters, had teeth as well as a beak, primarily marine and lived in the water. It's interesting because to me it looks like an example of what you would call convergent evolution. So it's developing a form that almost looks a bit fish-like. So I want to draw a dividing line here. This will be the end Cretaceous extinction 65 million years ago. Of course, it wipes out the dinosaurs. It ends the dominion of the reptiles. It also throws bird evolution off course, and it goes in a different direction. Actually measured in the rock here. So you've got a rock formation here with Cretaceous section before the extinction event, and you've got a Paleocene section after the extinction event. Interestingly, you've got a iridium layer that's actually a record of the extinction event. They say iridium's a very rare element on Earth, but it's common in meteorites. So I find it quite fascinating that you can actually stare the extinction event in the face, that it's recorded in the rock in this way, and you can actually see it. Bird groups that survived this extinction, just shown illustrated here, and then illustrated here, slightly differently. One of these post-extinction species is the Pelagornis, which I want to mention because it's relevant to the Latrorealm. So Pelagornis was a widespread genus of prehistoric pseudo-toothed birds, very large wingspan, and dates to the Miocene. So basically by this stage birds have lost their teeth. They don't have teeth anymore, just the beaks. In this case you have the evolution of a serrated beak, and they call that serrated beak basically pseudo-teeth. So the Shanwei Niao, a Hesperornis regalis, transported to the Latrorealm 100 million years ago through P-Gate 2. The Pelagornis gets transported from Earth to the Latrorealm 35 million years ago through P-Gate 3. That covers the more exotic animals. Of course, Latropeth has animals that you will recognize as well, and they all get transported from the Earth to the Latrorealm through various P-Gates shown here, shown here, shown here, shown here. So Latropethian culture and cosmology, how it classifies the different animals. So the animals are quite important to the Latropethian tribes in terms of their culture, religion, cosmology, mythology. So there's the animals created by the earth god, which is Wunim. Those are called Wunim animals. And you can watch the myth of the Wunim animals on this YouTube channel. Animals from the destruction of the Lahu monster. So these are called the Lahu animals. So refer to the legend of Lahu. Animals created by the sea sky god are called Kuwe animals. So refer to the myth of Kuwe, the Kuwe animals. And animals created by Ias, who's the consort of the sea sky god. So the female consort of Kuwe is called Ias. The animals created by her are called the Eas animals, and there's the myth of the Eas animals vid, which is also on this YouTube channel. The animals themselves, they're classified as follows. Most of the more exotic ones fall under Wunim. So the Wunim animals are all of these, but including the large forest herbivore, arboreal herbivore, nocturnal insectivore. So these are all the descendants of the Morganucedon from Earth. Egg snatcher, multituberculate, Aemia pelagornis. Egg snatcher, of course, is an evolutional descendant of the Hadrocodium, transported from Earth. Multituberculates come directly from Earth, as has Aemia and pelagornis. Pelagornis is the only bird that falls under Wunim. This bird is the messenger of Wunim, the earth god, and actually carries his sentiment and his temperament. You can see this in the Eas animals video. But basically when he's angry and he hurls the bird towards some purpose, the bird is actually carrying his anger, and then the bird turns red. So that's the Pelagornis. The Lahu animals, so this includes all of these, including the snappermouth, which is a descendant of the Hadrocodium from Earth. The Kuei animals, so this will include most birds except the Pelagornis, and also includes the Shanwei Niao and the Hesperornis regalis. The Eas animals, these are all fish that we have on Earth. Some others, so the bee is basically thought to be of the, well, it's said to be of the sun god, Paku. The crab and the lobster is said to be of the moon goddess, Kula. If you watch the video of Kula, the moon goddess, it talks about a conflict between the sun god and her, and it talks about crabs and lobsters, and you'll see the context of how they relate or how they come from the moon goddess if you watch that video. That's it. Thanks for watching.